In the 2 weeks since Graves left the Prima Scola, I thought of him almost hourly. He had looked so ragged and tired, wearing huge dark circles under his once luminescent green eyes. I wanted to see him back to his smart-ass goth boy self and at his best again. However, I got the sense that I never really saw Graves at his best, even when he seemed in his element. I was in awe and kind of jealous of him when we moved to the Reformed Scola, where he was treated like a prince by other wolfenkind. He even earned the respect of some of the Janvier teachers, namely Christoph's former confidant, Dylan. It seemed like years ago when we first met in a South Dakota history class. All the students, including Graves, were being bullied by some insecure tenured high school teacher. The tables were turned when I lost my cool one day and used the touch to choke the smugness out of her. I guess there ended my public school education. The world changed overnight for me, beginning with Dad being transformed into a zombie and having to kill him on our living room carpet. Graves and I became survivors of the real world, which we learned was filled with zombies, burning dogs, werewolves, suckers, flying snakes that steal your dreams, and everything in between. I still had not heard any word from Graves in the weeks since he was escorted to a wolfen retreat up north. I suppose I didn't really expect to hear anything right away, but it would have been nice, given we poured our hearts out to each other on that last day. I still have flashbacks of the words he spoke to me. Here's the thing, Drew. I'm not worth you, but I'm gonna be. I love you. Okay? I promise. It was nearly 4 weeks after Graves left that I finally got a letter from him in the mail. I tried looking for Nat in the caf at lunch, but I didn't see any sign of her. Maybe she was with Shanks again. They had been seeing more and more of each other in the past few weeks, so it was highly likely. Or maybe she was in the Wolfen library studying for anatomy. Since Wolfen classes are on the lower level, I didn't get to see much Nat during the day except for lunch hour. If I can change things as the head of the order, one day the Prima and all the Scolas won't have to hold separate classes for Janvier and Wolfen. Hell, if Anna could murder all the Sveticha for 60 years without anyone knowing, I certainly could change the location of the classes at a bunch of boarding schools, right? I could barely open the envelope of Graves's letter, since my fingers were so clumsy with perspiration and anticipation. The cream-colored paper looked handmade, but good quality. I held my breath as I scanned the words on the page. Dear Drew, I'm sorry that this is the first time I've written to you since I left the Prima. That day was harder for me than I can explain. I know I haven't told you about the past much, and there's a good reason for not sharing. Part is the shame, and part is being scared that you'll reconsider your feelings because I'm broken. The first week here I pretty much spent being fed some damn good home-cooked food. I'm sure I've gained back my weight, plus a few more, since I last saw you. I'm still so tired, Drew. I've been with the Wolfen healers every day, and I'm beginning to think it might not work. Every morning I get up, I tell myself something's changing. I'm trying to use the power of positive thinking. What the hell? It can't hurt, right? Drew, I can't tell you how long I'll be away. I think about you a lot, and smile when I do. You are beautiful, Drew. I should have told you. I was, still am, intimidated of your courage. Since you bloomed, I'm even worse. As much as I hate to imagine you and him spending time with each other every day, I know he does a pretty good job keeping you safe. Take care of yourself, kid. Graves. I read the letter 3 times, slower each time I did, wondering if there was a hidden meaning or feeling in between the paragraphs. I couldn't decide if his words were comforting or discomforting. Graves is the one person left in this world that truly gets me, and I wasn't about to give up on him so quickly. I worried if he would always be broken in some way. Would this scar on his psyche prevent him from being the man that he should be? I suppose the damage to a child can never be erased. I should know, since I never really got used to living without a mother. When Graves said that he didn't like the fact that Christoph was with me every day, I have to admit that it felt good. A little jealousy wouldn't hurt in this case. However, I don't like keeping secrets from Graves, and one day I'm going to have to spill the beans about the random make-out sessions with Christoph. I get a woozy feeling just thinking about his touch and the assertive way he acts like he wants me. Probably the most infuriating thing about it all is that Christoph has a way of catching me off guard every time. I wouldn't doubt he fully understands the element of surprise. I folded Graves' letter and stuffed it in my Yoda notebook for easy access later after Nat helps me get ready for bed. And Christoph says as usual, "Good night, Skowroneczko moja." In the weeks since the final battle with Sergei, when I saved Christoph from a brutal and almost certain death, I could tell that he had been making efforts to be someone better, just as he has said. Was he really becoming a better man? So far, it seemed he was trying. Since I resumed my normal Jean-Pierre classes, including our daily sparring practice, Christoph seemed more respectful, in subtle ways. He stopped demanding me to put your foot here or do it again. Once, Christoph had even asked if I was willing to go another round, rather than barking at me to do my positions over again. But then, maybe the change in him was because my skills had considerably improved since I proved myself with the Malaika to him. He was still using his business-like voice, but his tone was different, less serious and less scary. Nat and I cashed in my promise to shop till we drop in the city for my new wardrobe. Benjamin, Shanks, and 2 other Jean-Pierre that Christoph had hand-selected rode in the white SUV behind our sedan. Every time I go to a place like the city, I'm reminded of the country girl I was raised as by Dad and Gran after Mom died. Going to the city is such a culture shock to me, but Nat seems right at home. I let my wolf and stylist select whatever indie clothing boutique she thought I'd like. Literally being a fashion hound, she decided everything, down to my shoes. I've never been one to wear much other than Docs and Chucks, so donning anything that has even a slight heel is a huge stretch outside my comfort zone. Benjamin tried to hide his amusement when he saw the expression on my face whenever Nat brought me a dress to try on. The changing rooms were as big as my suite at the Scola. I hardly knew what to do with all that space. I have to say, shopping didn't suck, especially because we were served food. Once I even got offered a glass of wine. The only thing that could have topped the experience for me was if someone made me a banana latte. At the end of the 5-hour trip, I walked away with more clothes than I have ever owned in 3 states. The council convened regularly, and as a result, I was starting to ease into the decision-making duties required by Svetica. The political crap was still a big issue for me, but I often took my cues from Hiro by saying nothing and expressing a look of displeasure or approval. It would take time, maybe a lifetime, to understand the system at play. I still hadn't heard from Graves since receiving the first letter. The report from Shanks, via his cousin in Canada, was that Graves was undergoing intense healing, both mentally and physically. I had heard being Lou Guru carried more responsibility because of the expectation to lead. Any indication of being broken was career-ending. There couldn't be any doubts about the Lou Guru's strength. Dibbs, the ever-optimist, tried to make the situation sound positive, but deep down, I was worried for Graves. By spring, Christoph asked if I wanted to travel with him and Bruce to tour the European scholas. As the head of the order, one of my duties was to ensure our foreign counterparts were aware of my existence, which would maintain our alliance with the Maharaja against the suckers. The Nosferat scattered since they didn't have their king to unite them in hatred toward us anymore. Christoph assured me that it was just a matter of time before another bigwig vampire would rise up from the dead to fill the throne. Dictatorship, or whatever form of total domination they called it. He seems to know more than he's letting on. Not knowing how much longer the wait for Graves would be, I said yes to Christoph's request to go to the other scholas, including visiting his homeland. Nat, Ash, Dibbs, Benjamin, and 2 other guardsmen escorted us as part of my entourage. I felt so out of place with all these people just hanging around waiting for me to do something. Don't they know? I'm just plain Drew. Christoph was eerily quiet on our travels until we reached the capital city of his home country. Overlooking the horizon filled with beautiful stone buildings with ornate architecture, he spoke like he was outside his own body. Milna. When I was a boy, this area was known as Livonia. It looked much like it does today, with a few less office buildings. He smirked across the balcony at me. Christoph looked down to the streets below. We were high enough that the noise from the cars below us were inaudible. Christoph, tell me what happened to you here, before you hit the drift. Is this where you got those scars on your back? I reached out and laid my hand on top of his, which rested on the iron railing. He exhaled slowly. I am still not ready to speak about it, Kohana. One day I will share it with you, but not yet. He was looking at me, but didn't seem to see me. He was deep in thought and remained quiet on our return to the States. We arrived home about a month after traveling, just in time to enjoy the end of summer in New York. Not soon after returning to my routine at the Schola, I found myself facing down an attacker. I was in ready position, left leg ahead of the right, arms bent in a defensive position to protect my face and body. I tipped my chin downward in anticipation of his first strike. The sun was already starting to dip into the west as dusk settled in. This time of day was the most dangerous because of the change from day to night when suckers liked to attack. I waited for him to come to me. My master's lessons reminded me to be patient for the moment when he or she first lashed out. His voice spoke wisely in my head. Our objective is to end the fight quickly with the least amount of energy used. The assailant stepped forward with his right fist aimed at my face for a sucker punch. I blocked his move with my left and swept my body sideways before landing a strong kick to his knee. He recovered quickly, but before I could respond offensively, his hands were gripped around my neck. The air to my brain was being cut off. Think fast, Drew, before you lose consciousness and this is all over, Dad's voice would say. I brought my arms up and in between his elbows to thrust downward, breaking his grip, taking in a breath. With Svetata's speed, I advanced at him with my right knee to the groin area. This will teach him a goddamn lesson. He anticipated the junior move and blocked the knee, pivoted back and swiped my legs from under me. My whole body flailed to the ground. My rear, then head, hit the floor. I just laid there, flat on my back in defeat. Shit! How did that happen? The opponent stepped forward and offered his hand out. "Not too bad this time, milady. Shall we try it again?" Bruce was perfectly articulate as he spoke in his Arabic-English accent. I never felt humiliated by him, partly because he was so friggin' polite, even when he managed to kick my ass. "Please accept my apology if I hurt you, milady." "Bruce, how many times have I asked you not to say you're sorry for winning?" I practically rolled my eyes at him. He cleared his throat before correcting me. "Milady Drew, the art of Krav Maga is not about winning. It's about the neutralization of threat. Remember to keep the body moving so your opponent must guess, but never know what will come next. It is called retzev in Hebrew." "I remember, Bruce. It just feels like losing when I'm the only one to get taken to the floor." I smiled at my Kuroi martial arts master. He smiled back and gave me a slight bow. I rolled backwards and onto my haunches before popping up into ready position again. "Okay, bring it on." As part of my continuing Svetacha warrior training, Bruce volunteered to share his martial arts knowledge to improve my hand-to-hand defense tactics. While I was already an expert with Malaika, thanks to Christoph, and Anna, may she rest in peace, there were benefits to learning how to use my body as a weapon as well. In the fall, we celebrated my 18th birthday with a huge bash on the Skola's garden. The enormous, lush area was covered with a huge white tent with twinkle lights wrapped around each beam. Hundreds of paper origami birds hung from the ceiling in various bold colors. Nat had coordinated the event down to the last drop of bubbly. There were musicians, balloonists, dancers, artists of all types roaming the party. Nat really knew how to throw the party of the year. Hell, the century. I insisted on having both Jean-Pierre and Wolfen attend the event, including some of Nat's friends who were also female Wolfen. I've never been one to have many friends who are girls, but Nat was my best friend now. I fully relied on her opinions and recommendations. I had to admit that it was nice having other females around. Someday, things are going to change around here. Being transient for 10 years with Dad never really allowed me to enjoy anything like a birthday party. We just weren't in one place long enough for me to make any friends, but being at the Skola for my 18th was not bad. Among one of the perks of the event were the gifts. I'd never seen such gorgeous trinkets, books, a bedazzled pocket knife, and my favorite, a new 9mm gun. Shanks was spot on with good taste. Curiously, one of the boxes contained the most unusual gift. Within a blue container was a set of Russian nesting dolls, the Matryoshka. However, these dolls were different than others I had seen. The 7 outer dolls did not have eyes. Instead, they had holes where the eyes should have been. It kind of creeped me out just looking at them. However, the 8th and smallest wooden doll, the baby, had aqua blue painted irises. It was oddly beautiful. "Nat, did you give the Russian doll set to me?" "What, Drew?" She couldn't hear over the music from the band. "Did you give me this?" I held up the Matryoshka for her to see. Nat made a repulsed face. "Ugh, no, honey. That is weird. I wouldn't do something like that unless I wanted to freak you out." I was baffled, but didn't have time to dwell on it. At 3 a.m., Christoph approached and requested that he have a moment alone with me. The Wolfen girl I was talking and laughing with nodded her head slightly and stepped away. Christoph and I walked towards the quieter end of the gardens to the great stone bench on the west side. He cleared his throat with a slight cough. How does our grown-up little bird feel now? I gulped with anticipation of not knowing what Kristoff's intent was. Good, I guess, I said a little nervously. He took my goblet from my hands and set it on the bench. He opened my right palm and held my hands in his without speaking. He began to trace little circles with the tip of his middle finger into the center of my right hand. Then the sensation caused the hair at the nape of my neck to stand at attention. Kohana, I realize that you are very young in comparison to my years, and I understand your hesitation towards me because of this. I held my breath while he paused, thinking of what to say next. I see our age difference as an advantage because I can learn from you and you from me. I started feeling a bit light in the head from the palm dusting Kristoff was giving. Plus, I could sense what was coming. I suppose one does not need the touch to know that. You should know that my feelings for you have not changed at all, Milna. I hope you have seen that I have been different. More of what you need, and hopefully want. His blue eyes shined in the moonlight as the aspect glowed across his masculine, but delicate, facial features. I squeaked at first, then cleared my throat. Kristoff, I have noticed, and I am appreciative of the space you've been giving me lately. He tilted his head downward, but kept his eyes focused on me with intensity. He stayed silent and allowed me to continue. It has been more than difficult without Graves around, and without knowing when he's... My voice stopped coming out, afraid to say it out loud. Kristoff gracefully changed the subject as the emotion started to fog up my vision, coming to my rescue again. You must be tired now, milady. May I walk you to your room? I agreed, sniffing as he gently took my hand and led the way back to the Skola's dorms. Kohana, I know that you have been disappointed by the Lu Guru's lack of communication since he left. I swallowed hard and tried not to let the tears come up further than my nose. I looked over at one of the oil paintings of an ancient battle across the hallway to distract myself from really crying. However, he continued, have you come to any clarity over the year about what you want? I could feel my mother's locket slightly heating up and sticking to my breastbone. Chris, I have to admit that I thought about Graves every day at first. It was hard to wake up every morning and know that he chose to go away. I am being selfish, I know. Graves needs to take care of himself first, so that he can be stronger than he was. I sighed and looked down at Kristoff's shiny black boots. I still don't know what I need, Chris. I wish I could say. He closed his eyes and held his breath for a moment before saying, Drew, maybe the answer is not knowing what you need. It's about what you want. As he said this, he slipped both of his arms around my waist, slightly pulling me in closer so that my kitten-heeled shoes contacted the tips of his boots. That intoxicating smell of cinnamony apple pie baking in a warm oven filtered into my brain. Oh, Lord, I still don't know if that's damn smell is what I like or if it's really him. That smell reminds me of October, Halloween, Kit Kats, and a fire burning in the hearth at Grand's. He reverently bowed his forehead to mine, so our noses touched. Goosebumps and electricity washed down my spine. My legs were numb, and I found my hands gravitating upwards into his temples under his dark hair, which waved to blonde streaks when the aspect flushed. I felt my own aspect flutter through me as the heat between our connecting bodies fired up. My mind flashed to thoughts of Graves. Why hasn't he called, or emailed, or wrote, or sent me a word through Shanks? Has he forgotten? Is he still so broken that he has decided not to return at all? Why am I pushing against Kristoff when things don't have to be so complicated? He's here now, and he wants me. I tilted my chin upwards and slightly to the right, so that my softly pursed lips gently contacted Kristoff's lower lip. There was no reaction. His lips stayed slightly open, like he was smelling the gentle air passing from his breath into my mouth. I advanced by pressing my upper body against his chest into his black V-neck sweater. My mother's locket smashed between my black fitted dress and his thin layer of clothing. It was hot on my skin. My left hand moved to the back of his head and stayed at his nape where the dark, brown curls started. I used the tip of my tongue to brush his lower lip. A spark and a pop of noise went off in my head. I don't know if Kristoff felt that zip of biting energy too. However, just at that moment, he returned my little advances by pulling me in tightly. His embrace was firm as he kissed me full-mouthed. His tongue smoothed across my teeth and invited me to do the same to his. I leaned forward into him, pushing toward the door of my room. Kristoff silently turned the handle and pulled us in, closing the door and leaving us both standing in the dark.